I'm Patrick Watson, I'm an astrologer. These are 10 different types of Aries. So, you were born with the sun in Aries, the sign of Mars, the warrior, the soldier, the athlete. They're brash, bold and ballsy, brave, brilliant and boisterous, bold, belching and bedwetting. Okay, well, maybe not that. Aries is probably the most macho of all the signs. Overrepresented in fields like the military, law enforcement, firefighting, competitive sports, etc. They're headstrong people who like danger and risk. They have a need for speed. They like working with cars and metal, and they love the thrill of the hunt, and they love to win. Basically, anything that helps them feel like they're tough and top dog is going to be something that appeals to an Aries. But obviously, not all Aries suns are going to be like Steven Seagal, Jackie Chan, or Chris Kyle, so how do you explain the discrepancies? Everyone was born at a unique time and place. That's going to explain the discrepancies. There are actually a lot more than 10 different types of Aries, but today I'm just going to focus on one way you can differentiate planetary aspects to the sun. And I'm going to focus on just one aspect, the conjunction. A conjunction is simply when two celestial objects are close to the same degree in the sky. Different planets conjunct an Aries sun equals a different kind of Aries. So here are 10 different types of Aries with examples and a few jokes. 10. Sun conjunct moon in Aries. When the moon is conjunct the sun, it's a new moon. Our sun sign provides the broad strokes of our personality, whereas the moon describes one's instincts, habits, emotions, inner self, private lives, etc. Someone who was born with a sun-moon conjunction in Aries is not just an Aries on the outside, but also on the inside. For example, actor Marlon Brando was born with the sun conjunct moon in Aries. In his prime, there has been perhaps no other actor who has quite matched his animal magnetism. When we watched A Streetcar Named Desire in high school, I'm pretty sure every female student became a fan of Brando, and perhaps some of the males too. He was a force of nature, voracious in his appetites, sexual and otherwise. His most famous roles were Aries or Mars-type figures, hot-headed Stanley Kowalski in A Streetcar Named Desire, Colonel Kurtz in Apocalypse Now, and a ruthless mafia boss Don Vito Corleone in The Godfather. Brando was an Aries through and through. Another example of someone born at a new moon in Aries is the actress Lucy Lawless. With Aries being the sign of the warrior, is it any surprise that she's best known for her portrayal of Xena, the warrior princess? Even in her personal life, she is frank, fierce, fearless, and a fighter for her favorite causes, even up to the point of getting arrested. 9. Sun conjunct Mercury in Aries. Mercury is the planet of the speaker, the writer, the communicator. So someone who has the Sun conjunct Mercury in Aries is going to have a special connection to these kinds of topics, but with an Aries twist. John Madden was born with the Sun conjunct Mercury in Aries, and he is of course the famous hyperactive sportscaster. When you think of John Madden, you think of him screaming red-faced about football statistics and catchphrases like boom, whap, bang, and doink. He is literally famous for speaking, Mercury, about a competitive sport, Aries. So famous, he has a line of football video games named in his honor, and appropriately enough for a sign associated with having a temper, his name is even Madden. Quentin Tarantino was born with the Sun conjunct Mercury in Aries, and if his movies are famous for two things, it's the violence and his uniquely quirky dialogue. The violence is pretty much a no-brainer, since the conjunction is in the sign of Mars. He said, and I quote, "Violence is one of the most fun things to watch." Said like a true Mercury in Aries. Tarantino writes all his own movies, and his dialogues are a near stream of consciousness, full of non sequiturs and analogies and poetic or gut-punching one-liners. If you watch any of his interviews, you can see his nervous energy, his gesticulations, the rapid pace of his speech. You'd be forgiven for thinking he's a Gemini, but no, it's the Sun conjunct Mercury in Aries. I think I'm getting kind of hungry for a royale with cheese. 8. Sun conjunct Venus in Aries. Venus is the planet of the socialite, the artist, the lover. Conjunct the sun, Venus brings the topics of pleasure and relationships into the center of someone's life. In the sign of Aries, Venus's charms come at the edge of a blade, or sometimes on the receiving end of a repulsor beam. Maisie Williams is an English actress, better known as the character she plays on Game of Thrones, the much-beloved, critically acclaimed, needle-wielding, pint-sized badass Arya Stark. If you've watched my previous video, Venus twerking in Aries, Rise of the Warrior Woman, you'll see how Maisie Williams having Venus in Aries fits into a broader pattern of kick-ass heroines and the actresses who portray them in movies and TV shows. Robert Downey Jr. was born with the Sun conjunct Venus in Aries, and his life is revolved around the highs and lows of pleasure, falls from grace, and redemption. He is indisputably the biggest star of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, playing the charming, wisecracking weapons manufacturer and extremely Aries-like character of Tony Stark, aka Iron Man. Another side of Venus conjunct the Sun is that they are people who bring others together. For example, David Blaine was born with the Sun conjunct Venus in Aries, and his magic tricks bring people together. This might seem kind of stupid, but he idolizes Harry Houdini and is often compared to Harry Houdini, who strangely enough was also born with the Sun conjunct Venus in Aries. Rodney King was born with the Sun conjunct Venus in Aries. He became well known after the shocking video of his assault by cops went public. It was a really high profile case of police brutality, and the acquittals and otherwise light punishment of the officers involved directly caused the 1992 Los Angeles riots. That's when King made his famous plea on television, "Can't we all just get along?" Later on, King remarked, "Some people feel like I'm some kind of hero. Others hate me. They say I deserved it. Other people, I can hear them mocking me for when I called for an end to the destruction. Like I'm a fool for believing in peace." Bringing people together? Can't we all just get along? Believing in peace? That's pretty much Venus in a nutshell. 7. Sun conjunct Mars in Aries. The Sun conjunct Mars in Aries can make someone even more aggressive and headstrong. A particularly tragic case of this aspect can be found in the chart of Eric Harris. He was born with the Sun conjunct Mars in Aries, and he led the Columbine massacre, killing 8 people and injuring 21 others before killing himself. Now, I'm not saying if you have this aspect, you're the kind of person who would do this, but it's remarkable to see a configuration that on a very basic level suggests being prone to anger or violence, given what this person is most known for, killing a bunch of kids. Okay, this is too much of a bummer right now. Hey! There's also Hayden Christensen. He was born with the Sun conjunct Mars in Aries, and he's athletic and good with a lightsaber, and he portrayed someone falling to anger and hatred, becoming a villain, turning to the dark side. Also, you know you have Sun conjunct Mars in Aries when random people hate you and shout at you in public because they didn't like your acting in their favorite film franchise. Nice save, Patrick. Nice save. Yeah, that was good. 6. Sun conjunct Jupiter in Aries. Jupiter is the planet of good fortune, wisdom, honors, and awards. The Sun conjunct Jupiter often puts someone in the position of professor, judge, patron, or counsel, someone who helps and succeeds. In the case of Bill Belichick, who was born with the Sun conjunct Jupiter in Aries, it makes you coach of the New England Patriots. He is literally a Jupiter figure in an Aries domain, a coach who leads and guides a sports team to victory, and with astonishing success, deflated footballs or no. 5. Sun conjunct Saturn in Aries. Saturn is the planet of boundaries, obstacles, and limitations. Jesse James was born with the Sun conjunct Saturn in Aries. Who's Jesse James? You probably remember him as that trashy D-list celebrity that cheated on his wife. No, not that trashy D-list celebrity who cheated on his wife. But to fully appreciate the significance of the Sun-Saturn conjunction in Aries, we have to learn a bit more about him. Everything about this guy's life has been about enduring obstacles and hard labor in Aries-type endeavors. First, he endured an emotionally and physically abusive childhood because of his father. Then he encountered significant injuries playing football in college and working as a bodyguard for heavy metal bands. Then he toiled for years making customized motorcycles, an expensive and labor-intensive process without much financial success. After his business was featured in a documentary about motorcycles, he started getting high-paying celebrity clients in a few reality TV shows centered around customizing motorcycles, performing dangerous stunts, and making customized guns. He spent some time in rehab for his anger management problems and sex addiction. So yeah, a brilliant mechanic who makes things that go vroom vroom and bang bang, scarred by abuse and machoism, is pretty much the most perfect example of a Sun in Aries conjunct Saturn that I can think of. What about the outer planets, you may be asking? I have a few, but the outer planets take a while to go around the zodiac, so my examples are from a long time ago. So you're just gonna have to deal with that, okay? 4. Sun conjunct Uranus in Aries. Uranus is the planet of freedom and rebellion at any cost. People with the Sun conjunct Uranus are going to be highly individualistic, unable to be restrained or controlled. Daniel Ellsberg was born with the Sun conjunct Uranus in Aries, and he was the guy who leaked the Pentagon Papers, which revealed the extent of deception by the United States government in waging the Vietnam War. People question whether it was appropriate for him to have done it, but ultimately Ellsberg was doing what he thought was right, regardless of the consequences. And that's Uranus. 2 years after the leak, the Vietnam War ended. And if this reminds you of Chelsea Manning and WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange, it should, because they were also born with Sun-Uranus aspects. 3. Sun conjunct Neptune in Aries. The last time Neptune was in Aries was from 1861 to 1875, so I had to reach back a bit to find a good example. Neptune is a planet of fantasy, illusion, and mysticism. People born with the Sun conjunct Neptune tend to be a bit spacey, imaginative, and unrealistic in good and bad ways. Eugen Sandow was known as the father of modern bodybuilding. He attempted to imitate Grecian ideals of the male physique to match the golden ratio. If this sounds like a weird confluence of woo-woo Neptune stuff with macho Aries stuff, well, it's because he was born with the Sun conjunct Neptune in Aries. And honestly, you'd have to be a bit nuts to be the first person to pose like this for a camera. The original douchebag with a shirtless selfie, everyone. Neptune doesn't come back to Aries till 2025, and 19th century style strongmen mustaches have already made a pretty big comeback. What horrors await us? What horrors? What horrors? What horrors? 2. Sun conjunct Pluto in Aries. Pluto is a planet that deals with extreme forces, dark and shadowy powers, the dynamics of control and domination. People with the Sun conjunct Pluto tend to be pretty intense, sometimes manipulative and controlling. JP Morgan was born with the Sun conjunct Pluto in Aries. This isn't JP Morgan the bank that basically controls the world that we're talking about. This is JP Morgan the guy who started that bank and basically controlled the world in his time due to his consolidation of corporate finances in the late 19th century. I mentioned Aries liked to play around with metal, and JP Morgan was no different. One of his biggest corporate mergers created a virtual monopoly in the steel industry. He was literally the inspiration for the design of the Monopoly guy, Rich Uncle Pennybags, for a game where the whole point is to take complete control of a market and ruin perfectly good friendships over a period of at least 2 hours. 1. Sun conjunct multiple planets in Aries. Sometimes it can get tricky when you have multiple planets aspecting the Sun, all offering their own significations to create a more complete portrait of someone. For example, while he never thought much of astrology and would likely hate his mention on this list, Christopher Hitchens was born with the Sun, Mercury, Venus, and Mars conjunct in Aries. And was he not a bold and combative speaker and writer, simultaneously poetic and ferocious? This is someone who knew how to express himself, and he really didn't care if your feelings were hurt. That's Sun, Mercury, Venus, Mars, all conjunct in Aries. René Descartes was born with the Sun conjunct Jupiter, Uranus, and Pluto in Aries. He was this French philosopher, mathematician, scientist. Maybe you've heard of him. He kind of invented analytical geometry. He sort of kicked off a philosophical revolution that ushered in modernity and stuff. He proved that we actually exist, with a phrase that is so Aries, I practically can't even. I think, therefore I am. Even if you don't have any planets in aspect to your Aries sun, sometimes it just takes the right transit to activate its true potential. Robert J. O'Neill was born on April 10th, 1976 when the sun was in Aries. He was a member of SEAL Team 6, and he was the guy who shot Osama bin Laden in the head. On the night he did it, Mars and Jupiter were conjunct his sun in Aries, emphasizing a significant moment of danger and good fortune in his life, and more broadly, a distinctly Aryan act of revenge and justice for the victims of bin Laden's crimes, because that's how Aries rolls. That's how it's due. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, share, and comment. I'm releasing new videos every week, but you can get them a day early by supporting me on Patreon. And to all Aries suns out there this month, happy birthday.